and foremost, I guess, will you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Chesterfield County, Chair Davey.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Waddell.
Here.
Henrico County, Mr. Thornton. And City of Richmond, Mr. Giovia.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you guys all for joining in. Obviously, this committee hasn't met in a little while, and part of that was because of my own travel plans and stuff like that. And I know it's a busy time in the spring, so I appreciate you guys hunting and pecking for a time slot that worked for everybody. And Jacob, Neil, I appreciate you guys calling in. Next is the minutes, and I know, as always, they're circulated really well. I didn't see any problems with the minutes, but I wonder if anybody else had any comments or corrections?
Move to approve the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
We get a second?
I made a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second from Jacob. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Next item is brand implementation update. Martha's gonna lead that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna actually use the minutes as the outline because when we last met, we talked through what those expected deliverables were going to be. So I wanted to sort of hit on a couple of the things that we talked about. We debuted at the last commission meeting the cover sheet that you have in front of you here. This is intended to hit a couple of objectives, and I wanted to just say kudos to Janice for kind of thinking of this and putting it together. You probably recall that the agendas themselves were getting quite lengthy. The first page having a lot of information about how to get onto the Zoom and what the public comment process was and all that. And so we've tried to consolidate a lot of that intro language onto this front page so that when you flip the page to the next, you're really diving into the meat of why each group is here. The intention, if I'm not mistaken, is for the photos on these to rotate. So we host a lot of meetings a year, or a month rather, and so I think it's gonna be monthly, is that right?
Yes, one photo for all of the PlanRVA agendas, one photo for all the CBTA, one photo for all of the RRTPO photo agendas, but it'll be the same locality. So this month, our first month was Richmond, then we're gonna start alphabetical order. So next month, all of the agendas will have a picture of Ashland or from Ashland.
Very cool.
So they'll have a little bit of distinction depending on which body you're a part of, but we'll follow the theme, and yeah, so.
Nice.
We're really excited about that. This was one of the things that was born out of the discussion and the idea of still brainstorming at the last committee meeting. And so we hope, number one, it will help members to kind of dive right into the agenda, but also to be able to help this become a little bit more of a publicly accessible guide and start to build that brand that regardless of which organization someone is looking to observe in action, the flow feels the same, and it makes clear that we have kind of a way that we do things here at PlanRVA, whether we're staffing CBTA or the TPO or our own organizational meetings.
As a convener, you should know how to run good meetings.
Yes,
And,
yeah.
Consistency amongst organizations is great.
It is, and I will say too, Janice has been helpful with a couple of other regional public bodies and sharing some of the procedures that we've put in place for virtual meetings. As you know, the last couple of years, public meetings have been a bit of a conundrum for everybody to navigate with the virtual and all of that. So it's just been kind of cool to be able to see all that pulled together.
Okay.
Also on the cover sheet, you'll notice that we do have the new logo incorporated, so that's been incorporated into our other kind of staple documents, letterhead, agenda templates, those kinds of things. And so we have the PlanRVA where the region comes together to look ahead, and then down below, of course, if this were an RRTPO meeting, that would have at the top the TPO's logo, and then still at the bottom we have that powered by logo. So again, we've done kind of a full sweep to do much better at that. I think Katie Moody reported to the board at the last commission meeting about the new Emergency Management Alliance website content. So there also, if you have been there, it looks like Mr. Waddle has. In the top left, it has also the powered by PlanRVA, so that it's clear that visiting another entity, but it still has this relationship and connection to PlanRVA. And then Gilbreth has been working on a number of designs for some giveaways and handouts and things like that, that'll be coming out and be available, I think, later this spring. But we have been in the habit of producing a small amount of inventory for things to promote our Don't Trash Central Virginia anti-litter efforts. And so now we've incorporated that PlanRVA there so that it's clear that that program sits within PlanRVA and we're not just branding Don't Trash without connecting it back to the organization. So it's exciting to see that progress. I know it probably seems a little bit silly, but really being able to sort of build that brand unification has been a pretty big focus for lots of people on staff the last couple of months. So
For professional services firms, like consulting firms like ours, that we don't build anything, we don't make anything. It's been amazing how those simple things help advance and carry the brand.
yeah,
I mean, for 40 years, I've been hearing about Timmons Group trucks driving around this region, and it's subtle, but it's effective.
absolutely. Yeah, I will say I saw that when we partnered with PlanRVA last week to host the transportation forum, and really worked hard on coming up with that language of PlanRVA and PlanRVA are presenting the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization's Transportation Forum. So, I mean, it sounds a little bit like, oh my gosh, why are you spending so much time talking about that? But it has been a process for us to work through how to put the sort of appropriate billing and hierarchy of our organizational relationships and that. So, and it was awesome at the forum to be able to hear so many of the presenters using maps and citing them, because I remember, it did not used to happen. And so it really has been exciting to see how the organization is getting a little bit more prominently represented in some of those settings.
Great.
So of course, we also, since the last committee meeting, had the First Look event. I felt like it was a pretty successful event, great attendance, nice feedback. It was a good trial run for many board members to be able to get acclimated with the new space, hear a little bit about the surrounding area. I know many people have started to sort of partake in some of the businesses around the neighborhood, and hearing feedback that everybody's getting used to the new kind of traffic patterns and that kind of a thing. So that's all been going pretty well. And again, kind of behind the scenes, I think Sid and Janice and probably some others have worked to make sure that there's parking instructions and sort of all of that navigational things have been updated on the site, and to be able to make sure that as people are coming to the office, it feels like it's old hat to us, but we're still hosting things where it's the first time for people. And so that information has been really helpful. We also, kind of switching gears more to maybe another dimension for this committee, we've talked a lot, especially in the last couple of months, about our branding from an external perspective and how we show up in the community at large. But there's also been a theme, I think, consistent with this committee about how we interact with our member jurisdictions. So this piece was another item that was discussed at the November meeting. We debuted this at the First Look event. I don't know that the people on camera can see it, but it's that half-page cardstock sheet that's really geared toward commissioners and our local government representatives, whether they be on staff or involved in our local governments, to understand how we relate to the 9 jurisdictions and kind of what's this organization about and what does it mean to them. So this piece has been nice. It's been kind of a handy piece to be able to use as kind of that intro, leave behind kind of thing. And we are working, I think Gilbreth and Rashonda are working now to have a sort of similar piece that we can use when we're doing more publicly facing events as well. So we'll have kind of both of those audiences covered with just a quick and easy handout. So on the local outreach side, we've been piloting a local technical assistance effort this fiscal year. I would say that the expectations that we had have far been exceeded. We definitely know that our local governments are interested in working with us on a wide variety of projects. Barbara J. Cox and I have just completed, as of Monday, one-on-one meetings with our 5 smaller jurisdictions, smaller and rural jurisdictions, administrators and key staff, if they invited them, as well as in some cases elected officials. Mrs. Page participated in the New Kent meeting, Mr. Byerly participated in the Powhatan meeting. And just great discussions about how we can think about our work program for next fiscal year. And in many cases, it was an opportunity for us to do kind of that intro. Brett Chardine is new county administrator in Powhatan, so we actually met with him before he was officially named that. But just great to be able to think about how our organization can be a support to him as he gets into those shoes. And then similarly with Mr. Carpenter in Goochland County, it was just a great kind of excuse in a way to do that orientation, but also to be able to talk about next fiscal year. So our plan is to continue those outreach sessions, probably on a every six weeks rotation, or at least kind of quarterly do touch points with them.
Okay.
In addition, Barb has reignited the planning directors roundtable. So that is where all the 9 jurisdictions, directors of planning departments get together. It's typically been a lunch meeting. We went on kind of a hiatus during the pandemic, but everybody's interested in getting that back together. So I think they were together a week or 2 ago. And that'll get started to do a rotating around the region, so that we cover all 9 localities hosting over the course of a year. And then similarly, we began in November hosting a roundtable for those, again, the smaller jurisdictions, economic development directors, with the exception of Hanover, those that are not part of the Greater Richmond Partnership. Hanover is kind of in that middle ground, and so we have had Brandon Turner on Linwood staff come to those meetings as well, and then Jennifer Wakefield comes to those meetings representing the kind of GRP community. So in November, that committee, or that, it's not a committee, that group heard from Virginia Economic Development Partnership and some of the initiatives that were getting plugged into the governor's budget, stuff about site selection and some of the efforts that are going on with tiering up the sites around the region, and then also just some of the grant and other funding programs that VEDP has available.
So who initiated that, you guys convening that meeting?
So it was born out of the reality that those jurisdictions are not represented directly on the Go Virginia Regional Council. They're represented through me. And so it was originally designed to be kind of a conduit for them to hear on a regular basis what's going on with Go Virginia and how to stay connected in. So I had been making one-on-one calls to those folks after the Go Virginia meetings on a periodic basis, just to let them know, here's what's going on with the growth and diversification plan, or here's what's happening with this tiering project, or that kind of a thing. And through the course of those phone calls, there was a kind of a question asked, well, is there any reason why we can't just get together? And so we started that. And then when we met again in, can't remember if it was January or February, Mark Horrigan from Go Virginia, Sarah from the state came and they did a presentation about how Go Virginia is structured and had a really great conversation about that program.
So how did PlanRVA get designated by Go Virginia? That's the first time I've ever heard of it.
I sit on the council, and my seat is essentially to represent the smaller jurisdictions on the council.
As the executive director of this organization, that's the seat that they have to be a conduit to those 5 jurisdictions.
That's right.
When
Yes,
is
so
that,
Dr.
how long
Kate-
has that been there?
I've been on the council since it was formed, so I'm in my 2nd or 3rd term. Dr. Casey serves on the council. Richmond doesn't have a seat. The larger jurisdictions don't actually have a seat, but we have a limited number of public sector seats because it has to be majority private sector on the board. But Dr. Casey has a seat, and Monica Callahan has a seat from Henrico. She just took John Batulkas's spot.
Okay.
And then I think that the going assumption is that the city is quite well represented given the other stakeholders that are a part of the
So to me, that's interesting because, there was a initiative a number of years ago where PlanRVA also was trying to convene a regional economic development strategy, and it had mixed results because economic development isn't one of the subject matter expertises that we sort of communicate. So in this case, convener seems to be the bucket that it fits in. So.
And we are reviving those conversations about a comprehensive economic development strategy with GRP and active conversations to know whether or not it should be us or them. And part of it is the geographic coverage and the reality that GRP is limited in what it can do beyond the boundaries of its 4 jurisdictions that it serves.
Yeah, I'd like to be part of that conversation because I experienced it last go around, and I think we got to bring some of that institutional
Yeah.
knowledge forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
but I do think the strategic plan that we've drafted and are executing should be the answer if we choose to be involved in it. And then if so, what role would we play?
Yeah.
I think it's a really, really good opportunity to
And it's coming to a
affirm
head
that.
because with the infrastructure bill and some of the new, the massive amount of investment that's coming through the US EDA, more and more of these federal dollars are tied to how does your project align to the regional economic development strategy?
Yep.
And we don't have one
Yep.
of record. So, yeah,
Well,
Activation Capital ran into that problem. Jen's run into that problem a couple times with some things that they wanted to pursue, so.
All right. No,
Yeah, but I'd love to have you be
Yeah.
part of that conversation.
Martha,
Yeah,
Sort of.
I lost a little bit, or I'm a little bit behind. I understand that economic development is not part of our mission, and I'm impressed that you are involved for the smaller jurisdictions. Go VA, and then you mentioned GRP. I lost a little bit more information on
and the
that, please.
acronyms, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's not,
So Go Virginia is a private sector-led, public sector-funded program that's designed, in essence, at its core, to increase the number of high-paying jobs in the Commonwealth. So it's a state-funded program, formed 2015, 2016.
No, I was gonna say, it's
So it's been around for, 6 years or so. And it was, again, led by the private sector, really wanting to encourage regional cooperation for economic development activities to move beyond sort of the parochial competitive in-state boundaries and to really think about how economic development at a larger scale can function at the regional level. Thinking about employment sheds, the reality that certain types of industry cluster in parts of our region. And so the state was broken into 9 economic development regions. Those are called the Go Virginia regions. So for Central Virginia, that includes the planning district footprint of PlanRVA as well as the Crater PDC footprint. In most cases across the Commonwealth, it was a combination of planning district commission footprints. Only in very few cases, maybe I can only think of one where it sort of bisected a boundary area. But essentially, it combined 2 and sometimes 3 PDC footprints together. So as I mentioned, kind of from a governance perspective, there's each region has a organizing council or regional council, and that's a membership that is appointed. And in each case, the majority of those members must be from the private sector. So unlike here at the commission, for example, where our charter says that the majority of the members must be from the local governments, it's almost the reverse.
but these regional are small jurisdictions. Like you said, Richmond is not part of it. Small.
The Go Virginia regional footprint, our region number 4 is what we're called. It is inclusive of the 9 jurisdictions in the PlanRVA footprint and the 11 or whatever it is in Crater. I can't remember how many communities there are there. But it's inclusive of that entire footprint. So the city, but the seats on the council aren't tied to local governments, as they are, say, here. They're tied more to industry leaders, community leadership, civic, academic, and then there is a certain number of seats on the board that can be reserved for public sector folks, which is the bucket that I sit in.
Okay. I'm a little, thank you, and sorry to.
Yeah, let's not go too deep into that because that's a long story.
Is there a thank you. Is there a website I can go to? Obviously go.
I will send you some information, and
Please.
I know you'll enjoy reading the documents.
You read me well.
Yeah,
And
I'll
the
send you.
Greater Richmond Partnership is actually 4 jurisdictions initiated by the private sector 25 years ago. And so there's a similar long story about Greater Richmond Partnership as well. That's why in our strategic plan, trying to figure out what lane we want to participate in what role, I think was extremely important. knowing all these other organizations are out there. So,
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to get, thank you, I didn't mean to get sidetracked, but this is of interest and relevance. Now, acknowledge that it's not part of our mission. Do I sense that it might be something that the economic development might be brought into our umbrella?
So I think Mr. Davies said it well. Our role really is that convening. So, I mean, I would say it this way. We're not in the business of human resources either, but we do occasionally convene the HR directors of the region to promote their networking, to promote their kind of coordination, their relationship building. And so we're in essence providing that role. We do the same for public information officers, a number of different staff, kind of key staff positions at the local governments to make sure that they have access to their peers across the 9 localities. And so in this case, because GRP exists, there's not really a need to convene the large 4 economic development officials because I would tell you that they're in constant contact.
well, and there's an expertise there that this organization doesn't have.
Right. So really, we set the table for them. And in some cases, we help make connections. I mean, I and Barbara will do the logistics to be able to invite the speakers in or, the guests that would come. We order the lunches, I mean, those kinds of things, but it's really more the logistical convening support than it is driving any kind of content for them.
We exceed our expectations.
And it's really about providing that support to our local governments, not so much about the subject matter that those folks focus on. I will say it is informative to our work to know what their priorities are, to know what they're thinking about, to be able to hear what issues they have. I mean, all of those things, but it's not
Interesting. It's a fascinating industry. It's a fascinating profession, but it's often really misunderstood.
Yeah.
So,
Thank y'all for the big
absolutely.
picture.
Absolutely. So that's kind of where we've been from
Okay.
sort of the brand implementation. As I said, I mean, a lot of the focus of this group has been on sort of that public outreach, but I wanted to be able to talk a little bit more today about how we've been working specifically to dip into the jurisdictions. It's budget season, so it's been a little bit harder to get on the local government's calendars this spring, but we are working with the jurisdictions to be able to get scheduled to have Mr. Davis do a bit of a briefing. You all are aware, I know that Mr. Carroll has done, I think, rounds at all 9 of the jurisdictions now to do a briefing from CBTA, and that was really well received. Chet has been doing a lot of those briefings with Mr. Carroll and also has been doing a number of other types of community organizations, Chesterfield Chamber, a number of different, there were several Rotary clubs, I think out, Mr. Spoonhauer connected them with the Goochland Rotary, and there maybe is another Rotary out there in the region that they've been to. So those things have been happening as well. So that's kind of where we are. The next 3 months of the fiscal year have largely been focused on kind of what do we want and need to accomplish to make sure that our goals stay on target. Apologies, it's been quiet all day. Anyway, so one last thing I'll say on kind of the implementation deliverables for fiscal 2023. The last thing that was referenced in the minutes was reference to a community open house. We've been kind of noodling on that, and our current idea, which still needs to be vetted and fully considered, is can anybody read what Mr. Spoonhauer is saying? Let me see. Thanks, James.
Yeah, we got it. I just asking about the buzzing, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There's some kind of drilling happening downstairs, so it's unexpected, so apologies.
sorry about that, Neil.
Oh, and also, just Miss Lanier Jackson wanted me to let you know that she is in attendance, but she was driving and is not able to unmute, but
Got it.
she wanted everyone to know that she is able to hear the meeting.
Great, thanks. Where was I?
Outreach open house.
Thank you, open house. So we are in the process right now of working with the 3 chairs of the TPO, the PDC, and the CVTA. Sorry, the commission, the Transportation Authority, and the MPO, to be able to host our joint annual meeting. It's scheduled for June 1st, the first Thursday of the month. We are working to invite the governor to that event to hopefully get remarks from him about priorities and initiatives particularly relevant to the Central Virginia region. And we're also talking about leveraging that day to turn it into a full day kind of open house with a set of programming afterwards. Not so much geared toward the commissioners and the members of those boards. They could certainly stay. We would love for folks to be able to stay or pop in and out of the different events. But it would be a way to be able to invite our partners in, to be able to kind of see different things that are happening. So that's still in the concept phase, and I'll share more about that. Would love to get kind of feedback and input from this committee. But the hope would be that each year when we host that annual meeting, we would have kind of an extension of that event that would be a bit of a show and tell, if I can put it that way, of different things that are happening. So examples are, we've been kicking around partnering on a film screening that aligns with our environmental program. We've been kicking around the idea of having a on display of some of our emergency management apparatus, some of the regional assets that we've purchased through the grant program, have that on display, maybe some demonstrations with some of that equipment. So some different things like that that board members, but also members of the public might not typically be able to get to see and touch and feel, but we could do that on kind of a set day basis.
Where will it be?
Here, yes. So we're just in the beginning phases of that. So that's my notes and kind of update for where we are on number 3.
Okay.
One of the things that we wanted to do with this committee is really get some insight from all of you about upcoming fiscal year priorities. It's been a really effective tool for us to use the committees to be able to brainstorm a bit about how we want to think about next fiscal year, what the goals and objectives should be, where you all see kind of the public outreach and engagement efforts need to be targeted and aligned. So as usual, I have some ideas of things that we would like to see happen, but also want to make sure that this is open for others. We've talked the last, I think, 2 meetings about our website. So Mr. Spoonhour at the last committee meeting, I think, made this recommendation, and we're working on doing an interim update to the homepage, front page, to be able to help with navigation and make things a little bit more clear about where you are and why you're there and how to navigate and some things like that. So that's in the works. But website overall, we believe is due for an update. It's been since 2019, if you can believe it, that we undertook the pretty large website update. We've done the emergency management content, I think, twice since then, and haven't really touched the other content. So we did do with our website designer was West Carey Group on the 2019 edition, and so they did do an analysis of broken links, just kind of like terminal problems and some things like that. So we've got that report, and we also have a number of staff members who have, I think, some pretty strong opinions about functionality and organization and those kinds of things that we're working to put together a scope of work. The hope would be that we put together that scope of work and issue it this fiscal year so that we could head into next fiscal year informed by the proposals, incorporating that into the budget, but also being able to undertake that fully in next fiscal year so that we could launch a site.
It's not in our current budget?
No, it's not. No. It was in this year's kind of agenda to be able to scope it.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt like with the move and kind of some of the other things going on, that was a little bit more than we were prepared to take on.
Are there any outstanding task orders that we have our consultants working on then at this point?
We have with the on-call bench,
Yeah.
we have one task order that was issued for proposals, and I think the deadline, I don't know that you were involved with that, Gilworth, the deadline was Friday or Monday. And so we got proposals back on that. That's in support of the Emergency Management Alliance's CERT program.
Okay.
We have one task order that is getting ready to go out to help us develop our annual report and work program, kind of a document design project.
Okay.
We have, not under the on-call, but under a separate issuance, we just got, I think it was 11 proposals back from an RFP that we issued for the wayfinding project for the Fall Line Trail. So it's a little bit of design, but also a lot of engineering. So that's why we didn't go through the on-call exclusively. And we have an ongoing engagement with the Hodges Partnership for the media outreach. That's a monthly, so that's active, but not new.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we did do a call 3 weeks or so ago with the whole on-call bench to kind of brainstorm different projects that we knew were coming. And so most of those probably are going to be held until next fiscal year, but we've got kind of a slate of those projects that are coming.
So when will you propose the budget?
The budget process is underway.
Right.
We set priorities with the executive committee from their perspective in each of these committees over the next month and a half.
Right.
And then it goes to the finance committee on April 24th and the full commission tentatively May 11th. But we're talking with Mr. Davis because Richmond Region Tourism is hosting their 40th anniversary event that morning, and I'm worried we're not gonna have a quorum.
And does this committee need to weigh in on any budget recommendations?
Anything that this committee feels like it's sort of a strategic priority investment would be very helpful. One of the things that Mr. Davis has asked me to prioritize in the development of our budget this year is to align budget priorities with the key imperatives so that we can more clearly crosswalk those two objectives. So he wants to be able to, when the budget ultimately is presented from finance to the executive committee onto the full commission, he wants to be able to make that presentation to the board that really clearly articulates, here are key areas of focus for the coming fiscal year, and this is how we're investing in them.
So will we need to have a meeting to help frame this committee's recommendations?
I think that could be helpful if this committee is willing to do that.
All right.
There's also been a number of kind of other, I'll say like media projects that have been unbudgeted, so we haven't pursued them, but things like developing a video and some things like that that I think would be helpful to get your all's advice. I know Mr. Spoonhauer and I have chatted about this a little bit. Who's that video for? How long do we want it to last? You know, those kinds of things all factor into how we would scope something like that. You know, there's pros and cons to different ways that that could get storyboarded and designed.
Okay.
So those two are kind of two projects that are really germane to the budget, and certainly anything else that you might be thinking about from media, kind of in a broad sense. The other idea that I had was really thinking about how to more effectively leverage this committee. And so two ideas I had were, Mr. Davey actually was talking with me before the meeting and gave me some language to this, is really like, how could we leverage your all's networks a little bit more effectively? So if there are organizations that you are a part of that you think we should be getting in front of, how could we do that? How could we use your participation there to be an entree for us, whether it's an organization that we already know or it's one that we don't? I think in either case, that would be very helpful. The other opportunity that I think we want to do is try to leverage this committee a bit more in thinking about how to position ourselves in your local jurisdictions. Each of you are appointed by a locality, and so is the Board of Supervisors the right place to come and do a presentation, or is it really a subcommittee of the board, or is it the Planning Commission? Each of your 9 jurisdictions have a little bit of a different flavor when it comes to that, and so I think we want to get your counsel on sort of how we can be most effective in that outreach to the jurisdictions. I feel like we've got a pretty good handle on staff to staff, but the other parts of local government organization would be helpful for your assistance. And then the third bucket is, I've been thinking a lot about new commissioner orientation. We have a number of new commissioners that have joined this year. Depending on what happens in the election cycle, we will have a number of new commissioners joining, particularly with the announcements that we already know of who's not running and some things like that. So this is top of mind for me, and I do think that there might be an opportunity for this committee to play a more active role in not just the content, but the experience that a new commissioner has when they join our organization. One of the things that we've heard over and over again is that some of the biggest value that members, probably especially when they're first starting out with the organization, is the networking gives so much value. And so how could we kind of initiate that right off the bat? And I'm not sure me sitting in a Starbucks with the commissioner one-on-one going through a binder of paperwork really conveys that. So just kind of thinking about that and what opportunities we might have there.
Let's let Martha pause for a minute, see if we get some reaction to those 3 buckets. Jacob? Neil, go ahead, Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Martha, for that update. I have, regarding those buckets, and I have a comment about your earlier content as well, but I'll table that for after this. But so, it's interesting as the community outreach. I'm glad that we're looking at media. I think it would be great to sort of figure out can we use sort of advertising to get that word out. Actually, I'll parlay that into the other comment I had. When you were talking about, we're talking about community engagement, and I'm thinking about what we've got going on in Goochland, and you had mentioned the litter task force, or I forget how you phrased it. We're doing, have we put any thought to partnering with communities that are actively doing programs? So for example, around Earth Week, whatever weekend that falls, and Goochland County is doing a countywide litter pickup. Has there been any thought or work done to engage those counties that may be doing something like that to support them and get out in the community?
Yes, the Don't Trash Central Virginia material and kind of content and giveaway items, I think there's water bottles and tote bags and some actual like picker-upper things. I don't know what those are called, but stick things. Those were prioritized by the region's litter managers in the jurisdictions. So we convene that group on a periodic basis to say like what content collateral do you need? And so when, for example, there's a litter cleanup sponsored by the jurisdiction in Goochland, my hope is that Don't Trash Central Virginia material is being provided there.
Does Goochland have that role? I've never heard of it.
They are at the table with this coalition.
Really? Do you know who it is? We can connect offline.
Yeah, we'll find out. I will find out. I don't know. But I think we're not as strong in looking at how some of these groups my example would be I'm involved in an organization in my personal life that has a litter cleanup on Belle Isle in a couple weeks. And I'm curious to know, why did they decide to do it then? What are they connected to? Are they actually solving a litter problem? Because did they connect with the park? So anyway, I think there's a bigger set of questions that you're opening that we haven't had the ability to dig into. And I think we're having those same questions.
Well, it's good that I'm glad to hear we're engaged. We're interested to see how, if anybody on our side is utilizing the resources that are available.
I will find out.
I actually think, Neil, that if we use Martha's 3 buckets, I can sort of see maybe those buckets really becoming an agenda for this committee. And then if we're talking about what the committee's doing, and we're doing, as Martha suggested, is trying to leverage our own professional and personal networks to sort of create better outreach, I could see, us not only throwing 15 or 20 ideas out there, but I could also see that might be something that other members on the commission might be interested in joining the committee because of how we're doing that kind of work. I can see it being a little bit of a flywheel kind of thing for us. Yeah,
and I think, Mr. Chair, my point is, as we are in budget season, is there a way to carve out actually advertising dollars and to figure out, whether it's a regional wide litter message or emergency management or something? I think, our charge last year was to get out in the communities, and by Ms. Heater's report out, I think she's doing the team is doing an amazing job with that, and I'm thrilled. So,
Right.
What's the next natural progression of this?
Nope, agreed. So you're right. You hit 2 buckets. One is networking. 2 is what needs to be in a budget.
So 2 things I will say in response to that, and it'd be great to be able to have another conversation in this vein. We are signed on to be a sponsor for the Richmond Flying Squirrels this year and for the Richmond Kickers. Both of those are comprehensive across the full set, I'll say, of programs of our agencies. So we are going to be able to promote participation, public outreach from transportation all the way to emergency management and, environmental programs in between. The only advertising other than that kind of an activity that we have done in the past has been through Facebook boosting. So I do think that there's a lot more that we're not tapping into right now. And we would have the ability to do. It's really important to have that prioritized through the budget process though, because some of those more traditional, I'll say, advertising costs are not permittable under our federal grants.
Okay.
So we have to be careful and make sure that we're allocating our general fund discretionary dollars to those types of activities, because some of those activities are not eligible for reimbursement. So it'd be great to have that be kind of a topic at a meeting.
I agree. What else, Neil? Did you say you had something else you wanted to bring up?
No, Tim, I folded it in.
Okay.
I was trying to hit all three buckets, but I went for 2 for 3 from the free throw line.
You did. Using a basketball analogy. Jacob, how about you? Reaction or ideas for any of what
Yeah, I really
like to
like-
share, or Neil's?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really like the direction, the ideas. I think the wording, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have that that economic knowledge that you were talking before either. So the horizontal integration, I think, is the term across jurisdictions for the litter project. I think that's a great idea. But then Martha mentioned leveraging our networks, and I think that's really important because there's an advocacy component that obviously it's
We're having a hard time hearing you, Jacob.
Hey. Mhm. Can you hear me now?
Nothing now.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, I can hear him fine.
We were hearing you a little bit. It just was fading in and out, but now we got nothing.
Ask for a repeat.
What about now?
No, still nothing, Jake.
I can type it.
Janice, is there something on here that we can do?
What about this now?
Do you want to try to, I hate to use, often logging back in maybe fixes it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on his end. Let me check for a second. Mr. Spoonhour, can you hear us and can you just let us know that we can hear you still?
Yeah, I can
That
hear
was a
you.
joke, man.
I can hear Jacob on and off.
It's like,
I can hear him, but
it's not coming from the
right.
ceiling. I'm gonna grab more.
I think
Yeah.
we've got a small technical problem here too right now.
No problem. I can put it in the chat.
I'm turning the mic up. The ceiling mics.
How about now?
That's the ceiling mic.
All right, try it again.
Can we hear me now?
No?
Nothing.
It's like it's coming through the TV.
Yes, I hear just very faintly. We didn't do anything to change anything. I've turned that up so loud now that I'm hearing an echo of my own voice, so they've got to come back down. That didn't fix it. Let me check with Sid real quick.
Can you hear it now, Jacob?
What? I can hear everyone. What about me?
Sorry, Jacob.
Hmm?
Mr. Chairman, once you go around, I've got you.
Yep, I will.
I'm done staying.
Yep.
Well, Sid is responding now, and Mr. Giovia has indicated he can put his comments in chat and we can share them out
Okay.
loud for him in the meantime, and while Sid is working on the.
All right, thanks, Jacob. Charlie, why don't you go ahead with,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I took some notes and I'm just going to hit almost everything, but a side comment to respond to Mr. Spoonhour's about the litter campaign. As you know, Don't Mess with Texas is really an anti-litter, or started out as anti-litter. And in thinking about that with Ms. Spoonhour and Martha's Belle Isle pickup, that might be something, a small initiative that we could morph into regional, like Don't Mess with Texas kind of theme, so that in conjunction with Earth Day, something like that, that we could sponsor and oversee and bring folks together. Our networks, that could work two ways. I've got different contacts. One is a friend that is the president of one of the Rotaries in Verona, for instance. And she could, through me, I could make a contact for, through PlanRVA for some expertise to speak to them. Now, our contacts, I've got other groups that I am part of that y'all could use through me to contact them, like some school or things of that nature. So it could be two ways. Now, some of the other groups, the PC, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, y'all have already contacting boards with those presentations. But we're in the middle of a comp plan rewrite, so, and they're very competent planning commissioners. They know their region. That might be one of the groups, at least in Hanover, to reach out to for the global benefit of working together and looking, I'm going to say sideways. We'll never get interlocking comp plans, but at least bring in some of like King William and Hanover together to understand problems they are having or bring it to us. But having you reach out to them, different planning commissions, to see the regionality and to emphasize that. New commissioner orientation, maybe a 20-minute video or something like that, where they could see 2-3 minutes of what we do. Some of the presentations, some video clips from some of the presentations that we had. Housing was very informative to me. The emergency management was very informative to me. What we do, branding documents, and I've mentioned a couple times in some of the meetings, our branding document is basically complete, if I understand that. And following the housing and the emergency response, I suggested that be part of the documentation, but again, it's almost all finished. That should be maybe a separate document of resources and partners so that different jurisdictions and different groups that might have a need or an interest in more expertise could go to that. And it could be online links on our website so that if they need some expertise, like the housing folks in one county might want to cross jurisdictions, cross-pollination there. We could be the central repository of information, both in printed and the electronic. That's been all I can think of.
Got it. Well, I think we're not necessarily looking to make decisions, but it sounds like what sort of working backwards from the budget, what we need to do is to think about those three buckets, think about sort of new ideas, and actually sort of bring those to a meeting that happens sometime in April or early May. That's the latest, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we could meet in April, that would be
And then
ideal.
the main purpose of the meeting would be how are we recommending an outreach budget for next fiscal year, right? That's sort of our next most important to-do list. And then the ideas of sort of refocusing the committee for the next fiscal year would be where those ideas, Charlie and Neil, start playing out into those three buckets maybe. And maybe you and I will craft an agenda for a meeting in April.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Chair Davey, I think we fixed the issue, and Mr. Giovia indicated that what he had wanted to share was a suggestion to leverage networks to develop coordination in and advocacy programs. But he should be able to be heard now.
Give it a shot. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate everyone's time.
Go ahead and elaborate on what you took the time to type in.
Yeah, no, I really, I'm receptive and responsive to all the ideas. I really like what Martha has, what Mr. Spinner said. I like the website. I think Martha's right on the money when we're talking about, positioning within local governments and then leveraging our networks. That starts to get into and could start to get into, if we're all on the same page, advocacy. But I think we need to be thoughtful about that conversation because I don't want to be ahead of the executive committee or the decisions that they're making. But I do think that there's some overlap when we get into outreach and the needs of the people that we're making contact with.
Got it. Well, Martha and I were talking too, and this is something to give some thought to as we head into that next meeting. I mean, there's many boards that people sit on, I know I do, where there is maybe one or two staff in the organization and the boards actually do all the work. We have the benefit, much like the Chamber of Commerce, where the PlanRVA has got a very competent staff. Most of the work gets done by staff, so we need to sort of figure out whether we're going to be advisory or whether we're going to roll up our sleeves. So these ideas are more along the latter. What might we do as committee members to roll up our sleeves and complement what staff can do? So clearly what we do with our professional and personal networks would be something that complements it. Clearly supporting Martha in a budget request to go ahead and ask the board for more money, that's something I see as important for this. And then on a technical level, I like the idea of the new board member orientation, because if any group ought to be able to articulate what they would expect a board member to do, it ought to be us. So I think I like those three, but I really suggest that maybe be our agenda going forward, is to use those buckets as agenda subpoints.
Yeah, I like that too.
Good. All right,
The April meeting, do we have any suggested dates?
working backwards from I guess you're gonna present something at the,
The Finance Committee will meet on April 24th,
okay,
25th, excuse me, which is the last Tuesday of the month.
okay,
So to give them time we like to get things out to them the week ahead. So
Okay.
it would be nice to be able to have maybe this group meet either the week of the 10th or the 17th, kind of early in that week at the latest, if that's possible.
okay. So a weekend, so April 17th could work.
Uh-huh.
Monday, April 17th.
Jacob, what do you think? Is that possible?
Yep, that should work.
All right. Neil, are you still on?
He's gone.
And we lost you. All right.
He's back.
Oh,
Yeah, so for me, the morning of the 17th would be my preference.
What time?
Neil, can you meet the morning of April 17th?
Yes, I can.
All right, 9 o'clock, Charlie, does that work?
It does. I might be a few minutes late because of traffic, but I plan to be here at 9 o'clock.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, let's aim for 9 o'clock on the 17th.
Excellent.
There's construction.
It's music to my ears, Charlie, that's the business I'm in. So when there's construction, cash and checks, so.
I praise the constructors every time I pass through traffic delays.
All right, do you have anything else?
Gilbert or Rashonda said, Janice, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Nothing on my end.
Thank you.
Jacob, anything else from your perspective?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, Neil?
I'm good, thanks.
All right, thanks for joining in, Charlie. Anything else?
No,
All right,
I got a couple personal things, Hanover things to share with Martha.
Okay,
And y'all can hear it.
I'll get with you. Okay.
all right, well, we formally adjourn. Thank you guys for your time. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. For what it's worth.